Hi, so this week we're going to take a break from just you staring at me, staring at a camera, and we're going to talk to my friend Jess. And Jess, you are an adult autistic person and you were diagnosed in your 30s,
Oh
right?
no, I was
40?
42.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so obviously having an autism diagnosis doesn't change who you are as a person or how your brain works.
Right.
And so there's lots of videos that exist about how to tell if you're autistic, how to get a diagnosis. So we're not going to go there. Other people have done that. But I'm curious for you, if it doesn't change who you are, then what has changed for you having that new understanding of yourself?
Yeah. It allows me, so even though I don't have any direct benefits of like being able to go to my insurance company and say, "Hey, I'm autistic. Can I see an autistic, specializing therapist?" That's not a thing. Or at least it's kind of becoming, but it's not there yet. But it does mean that I can do my own research, which is something that I enjoy doing as an autistic person. And it means that I can find the resources that I need. I have a better understanding after learning more and more about autism itself and like the variants that you can experience. I also have ADHD. I also have a bunch of other things. So I think all of those things are very adaptive traits and have allowed me to, yeah, be able to get to know myself better, be able to navigate life and challenges, and have only increased my resilience, though I think there's always the potential for it to go the other way. Um, but yeah, the self awareness, the understanding that that I now have access to, which would not have been accessible without that knowledge of the autism, is vastly helpful. It's helpful for me as a mother with my children who are both also autistic. It's helpful for me just learning how to navigate my own awkwardnesses with social situations to understand why it's there instead of just blaming myself or feeling, frustrated or ashamed at my own lack of communication skills in certain situations. And those typically tend to be the ones where it's neurotypical to neurodivergent that I struggle with the most, which is pretty typical, I think,
Yeah.
for neurodivergent people.
Yeah, yeah, I hear that all the time, both
Mhm.
from neurodivergent and not neurodivergent
Mhm.
people, of
Yeah,
there just being kind of a
yeah,
wires getting crossed
uh-huh.
experience
Yeah.
sometimes.
It's like you can be on the same wavelength when you're in within that scope of the neuro, for me, neurodivergent, and for neurotypicals I would imagine it's for them the same wavelength is much easier to access between neurotypicals. And then when you're trying to cross over, then it's like, okay, is there a boat somewhere? Can I get on that boat? Do I need to build a boat? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm curious, are there things uh about yourself that you now understand to be autistic traits that you maybe saw more negatively or harshly before the diagnosis that you have been able to have more compassion for?
Oh yeah. Well, so the way that that manifested for me, growing up, my brother was extremely likely to have been autistic as well. He was diagnosed with everything else. This was right before they were really recognizing what they used to call Asperger's, and so he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, ADHD. He was diagnosed with OCD, like obsession with death. Like he was like everything, and medicated multiple ways, and institutionalized as well. And there are, of course, a lot of traits, characteristics, behaviors that I was pattern matching and seeing in my own children and was kind of concerned about, but I didn't want to color it through a lens of negativity. So I tried to stay open to what that could mean. And through various conversations, a very helpful conversation with you about PDA, pathological demand avoidance, or as some people like to call it, what is it? Pervasive drive for autonomy, which is
Yep.
a very good name and sums it up quite nicely. um, so that conversation led to the rabbit hole research, burrowing and digging in for several months, which is what helped me realize, oh, like this is my kids, but it's also my brother and it's also me. And it looks different for me because of the way I was socialized, because of my own personal experiences, my own childhood traumas, and because I was born female. I have body characteristics of a female and I had a lot of experiences because of that. And so that contributed to the way that, I became a high masking, late diagnosed autistic person. Um, and I did run into issues with my mother, who also recognized those patterns and traits in my kids, but was reacting from a different place, was reacting from a place of being triggered, and concerned and worried, probably just because she didn't understand why this was happening with my kids, and recognizing the similarities between my brother's behaviors, which were very much affected all of our lives, because he did not have the support that he really needed, and instead was actually kind of harmed by the medical establishment, the psychological establishment. So yeah, so there was some tumultuous, heartbreaking times, and it's way, way, way better to have an understanding of what my kids' needs actually are and what my needs actually are. I'm still learning. There's
Yeah.
so much room for learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm hearing there is that you were noticing some of those similarities
Mhm.
before you all had
Yeah.
diagnoses, and that because the outcomes for your brother were scary
Yeah.
and not what you wanted for your own kids.
Undesirable.
Yeah. That because of that, it was scary to
Yeah.
see things that reminded you of him in
Yeah.
your kids,
Hmm.
and that understanding, and maybe in yourself as well, and that understanding those from an autistic lens has now allowed you to see that those traits don't determine the outcomes.
Yeah.
That's how those traits are supported and
Yes.
seen that determines the outcomes that
Exactly.
happen.
Makes an absolutely huge difference. I homeschooled my kids for a number of years, and that was a very good thing, in that they got to be themselves for the most part, and really kind of get comfortable, at least on some levels, with who they were and some of their challenges before going to school. That has presented its own issues. It's a giant transition to figuring out how to develop those social skills so that they can do both. It's really, I think for anybody, it's really hard to learn how to accept yourself and interact with others, especially if the message you get from others is that you're not okay for
Mm-hmm.
various reasons. And we still have institutions that promote this. School is a big one. And so trying to help my children understand why that's there and what we can do to address it, while also kind of needing to play along in some ways,
Mm-hmm.
um, by necessity. Yeah. And that's your question.
Yeah, and uh that's a really hard path to navigate. I think it's a really important thing to
Mhm.
talk about, and for people who are maybe walking this path of understanding themselves or someone close to them differently,
Yeah.
um, to think about, how to both embrace who they are as a person, and then navigate the world
Mhm.
as that person in a way that keeps that identity of self intact in a healthy way, and also tries to avoid pain in the world, which is what we all
It's kind of a
want for our
catch
kids, is to
22.
try to avoid
Yeah.
pain in the world. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's a really hard thing to navigate when
Hmm.
you are holding an identity that is potentially not safe out in the world.
Right. And then also on the other side of that, especially with autism, learning how to be flexible enough, not overly flexible, which is also an issue, especially for people who are socialized as female. We tend to be
Hmm.
extremely obliging, and very concerned about everyone else's feelings. So, for lots of reasons, it's not simple. Um, yeah, learning how to love and accept yourself seems like it is becoming more and more necessary, more and more immediate, and happening or needing to like develop earlier and earlier in life because of the way that these our cultural institutions are having an effect on us. We need to do this work in order to, I don't know, what, fight for the right to exist.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything in particular that has helped you in you integrating your autistic identity? Is there anything that has helped you move towards more understanding and acceptance and, you know, self-love? And I know it's not a finished done deal. It never is, but is there anything that
Right.
has particularly helped you on that path?
I I cast a wide net. So it's everything from getting the right support, finding your community, finding people who love and accept you the way that you are and can see you. It's learning about yourself, whatever that looks like, whether it's through experiences, travel, relationships, research. So,
We
um,
love us a special
oh
interest.
yeah. But yeah, like I think for me personally, it was reading, was not a surprise, and reading a diversity of sources. So reading books written by people with their own experiences really helped me identify the autism in myself. That was way, way more informative than reading the DSM description of what autism is, because that is a woeful position of ignorance a lot of the time. And yeah, so other people's experiences, YouTube,
Hmm.
YouTube, um,
Yeah.
and also reading the studies, also reading the science, because that helps me see things from different perspectives.
Hmm.
Um, Putting my, myself in their shoes metaphorically and seeing like what does this look like from the outside, and then being like, oh, actually in that kind of circumstance, this is what would be going on for me. And now that I have a better understanding, like I can kind of see both sides as to sometimes
Hmm.
where the miscommunication is happening, where the misinterpretation of behavior is happening.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it sounds like that was kind of a helpful translation guide
Mhm.
to dealing with the non-autistic world of helping you to
Mm.
see what it might look like to somebody else from the outside, and
Yeah.
that doesn't make it wrong for you to be who you are and be experiencing what you're experiencing, but
Mm.
to maybe be able to translate it or
Mhm.
understand where it's falling apart.
And I'd have to say too that, my unique background is that I also have a pretty good, not excellent, understanding of human development. My first degree was in early childhood education. Most of my experience is in working with children, watching humans develop. Um, Autism is sometimes like used to be referred to, I guess, especially with Asperger's type of diagnosis, people used to be referred to as like little anthropologists. Um, we are paying attention, we are trying to learn, we are studying because it is not an innate understanding that we're born with. We don't just tune in to the social stuff and go,
Hmm.
oh, I get it. We have to figure it out the hard way. And so, yeah, so just studying human behavior is helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last question maybe I want to leave people with is if somebody watching this is in a position of recognizing that maybe they're autistic or maybe somebody close to them, child or adult, is
Mhm.
autistic and is wondering like, what does that mean for them? Um, is there is there anything that you would offer to someone who's contemplating whether or not to explore this identity that they suspect might exist?
I think that if you are able to get to the point where you're questioning it, then you're on the precipice of a journey of discovery. Go for it. Do your research, talk to people, learn, try to have an open mind, try to see yourself in different ways. Um, because honestly, it's the denial or the need to not experience shame around your identity or other things that can just get in the way of you being able to see yourself that way that is a real blockage.
Hmm.
And it's not that everyone needs to learn that they're autistic because that's not true. But there's a lot of, you know, wonderful, beautiful, amazing things to embrace about neurodiversity of all kinds. And we all bring something. We all offer something unique, unique perspective. So it's worth exploring.
Yeah, and I kind of had the opposite side of that that I went on deep dive long before you were diagnosed about autism because of someone close to me who was diagnosed, and there were some superficial things that I was like, oh, those things are also me. And when I went on a deep dive, I found I was like, I don't think this is quite me.
Mhm.
There are some things, but like not enough of the things for it to feel like an accurate understanding of myself.
Mhm.
But even so, even going on that exploration and asking those questions gave me more understanding of myself
Yeah.
and also more understanding of what things I value in other people in my life and a deep appreciation for the awesome autistic people in my
Yeah,
life.
and yeah, I think take I don't want to say something cheesy, but it's just like all the colors of the rainbow. Like, we need everybody here.
Yeah.
Yeah, not just one color, flavor, texture. Like,
Yeah.
ew.
All
So
right.
diversity.
Well, thank you for
Mhm.
watching. I hope that you got some valuable insights into uh, where you can go with understanding autistic people in your life or understanding yourself or embracing all the ways that you're weird and wonderful. And if you are looking for support, there will be a link in the description for um, yeah, community where you can find other people who will also embrace you as all of who you are, all of your identities.
One thing I would add is if you are female presenting or socialized or high masking, it would be a good idea to find somebody who specializes in diagnosing either high masking autism or women, because it can definitely get missed. And if you're going only based on what insurance covers, sadly, that is not a great route. That is a current complaint around the world right now. But it might be worth it to talk to people who can see it instead of trying to find ways to not see it.
Yeah. And that your own understanding of yourself is valid and valuable, even if professionals are not
Yeah.
seeing what you're seeing.
Yeah, because you can
Yeah.
meet the wrong professionals sometimes.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you. This was really fun. And if you have questions, you can ask in the comments or send me an email. And if you have questions for Jess, I'll pass them along. Maybe we'll do another video.
Yeah.